you have a guy that walks in your office with his intestines hanging out, you're not signing a contract. You're getting that guy to the hospital.
Hello, and welcome to the Attorney Post, your guide to the inside scoop when it comes to all things legal. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm joined by John Gariglietti, who runs the eponymous law firm, Gariglietti Law, and we're going to jump over here and see his website as always. As a caveat to our viewers, currently, John's had a pretty meteoric rise in what he's been doing, and so his website is actually in the process of being built. Oh, I just killed the screen share. Sorry about that. So right now, it's kind of a placeholder website, but you will see a much better website soon. By the time this podcast is live, you should be able to see his website. But if you'd like to visit his website, just visit garlawyers.com. That's GAR lawyers.com. As always, we'll have a link in the description down below. If you've been injured and you want to talk to an attorney, you can also call him at 816-631-4878, which I have on good authority, spells out 631 hurt. So John does a lot of injury law, complex torts, etc. We're going to talk about that a lot today. Before we get started, as always, we're going to jump over and read from our sponsors. And as always, we have two at the top of the hour. Our first one is nationalerc.org. You may have noticed that the world went through a pandemic recently, and many businesses were forced to shut down, reduce their hours, had supply chain interruptions, and ultimately suffered reduced revenue in 2020 and 2021. What you may not know is that Congress recently passed the CARES Act, which allocated about $400 billion in stimulus funds for small businesses that never needs to be paid back. This is not a loan, unlike the PPP or Paycheck Protection Program. This is essentially free money for your business that can be spent in whatever way you think makes the most sense now. Right now, nationalerc.org is helping small businesses get the maximum amount of money that they can, and you can calculate and see how much you could get back by visiting nationalerc.org. The average small business we work with gets over $200,000 back, or they work with and gets over $200,000 back to invest in their business that never needs to be repaid. The calculator is completely free, and there's never any fee unless they secure funding for you. They've helped over 9,000 businesses get money that was owed to them by the government. So visit nationalerc.org. Our second sponsor at the top of the hour is Groove Funnels. If you love spending thousands and thousands of dollars to build new websites and hundreds of dollars for monthly hosting, then by all means keep doing whatever it is you're doing. But if you're like me, you hate that stuff. And that's why I personally recommend Groove Pages, the all-new, all-in-one website funnel sales platform from internet marketing legend Mike Filsaime. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for free and build a complete website at no cost. Really, truly, legitimately at no cost. You can build, actually, I believe, up to 3 fully functioning websites. And it's a basically Swiss Army platform that'll do webinars, sales funnels, websites, blogs, affiliate programs, all sorts of things. Basically anything you can imagine you can build on Groove Pages. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up today. And yes, again, it's really free, no credit card needed. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. All righty. So again, I am joined by John Gariglietti, and he is the attorney behind the eponymous law firm that bears his name, Gariglietti Law. The website is garlawyers.com. And again, the full website will be up soon. He is a Kansas University graduate who got his JD in civil and tort law in 2009. And he's had recently a meteoric rise when it comes to his notoriety as an attorney, such that he's actually founded his own firm, Gariglietti Law, that has brought on rapidly new clients. In fact, I'm told he brought on almost 31 new clients in a single day, which is absolutely astounding. And that's part of the reason, the fact the website's not even fully done yet. He's just been going at it nonstop. So very happy to have him on the show. John, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, the first question I like to ask, because it's always hard to summarize who somebody is in a short introduction. Can you let my listeners know, John, what did I miss in the story of you?
Oh, no, I think you did a great job. Actually, the bringing all those clients in actually in one day, that was the first week I started my law firm. Actually, the Gariglietti Law Office was established in 2011. So now it's come full circle. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And
yeah.
And basically, yes, I mean, I had a business plan prior to even taking the LSAT, because kind of similar to COVID, I was a stockbroker right before that crash in 2008. And I'll tell you what, try selling stocks and try selling anything at that time. I mean, it's in the market that I was in. I mean, not many people really want to short stocks or short anything. And so I had to pivot, and I did. And it's kind of an interesting story, but my dad was a chief judge, and he told me not to go to law school. So I didn't. He was a wise man. And so I became a stockbroker, financial advisor. But the market hit 2008, and I went to law school. But at that point, I knew very well that when I was going to graduate, if I was not in the top 3 percentile with honors, there's no job because of the recession. So I knew I had to generate business. I had to be a generator. And so that's how the Gariglietti Law Office began. It began even before law school, but and definitely, planning and strategically planning to hit the ground running. So yes, the first year as a lawyer, I was able to obtain over 100 clients, PI, work comp, and from what I hear, people that have told me that's a record on from a standpoint of other lawyers. So it worked, and so that's one thing that I think is interesting. I found that, I mean, it was just strategic planning, really, but that's how the GAR Forum was founded, and we're back. We're back in business. So,
and you're back. Awesome. So I got to ask you, were you the kid that just always knew you wanted to be a lawyer and your dad didn't like that idea and that's why he said no? Or what got you into law? And then how did you know you wanted to go into this aspect of law? I mean, obviously the economic downturn got you into law, but like what attracted you in the first place?
Dad was funny. He was a judge, and I wanted to do something professional. I was always very, very strict about myself, getting straight A's and all those things to become a professional. And when I graduated college, he said he told me not to. He told me not to become a lawyer. He wanted me to actually go into insurance and build a book of business, and the residuals off the premiums were, basically he knew a guy that built his book up, and I did just play golf all the time. I mean, I think that was his kind of outlook. So, but he also wanted me to be a kicker in the NFL. He thought that was the easiest way to get in the NFL. So he sent me to kicking school when I was in high school football, and I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a kicker. I wanted to hit people. So I didn't like that. I wanted to play linebacker. So that's what I did. And so he had some ideas about me. And I think about it today. And even race a car. He bought a dragster, like a long one. He wanted me to do that too. And that's the one I actually think about because of my last name. It seems like Andretti, you get Mario Andretti, maybe Gariglietti. I mean, maybe that could have taken off. But honestly, I thought about that car. I mean, those things explode. I don't know. It just didn't seem very safe. So, but tell you the truth, I just always liked sales, and I feel like I think I could just replicate that in the courtroom. I wanted a challenge. I wanted something. I wanted to go learn deeper. I wanted to go further. I wanted more information. So, and I also wanted to be a doctor. So I actually went back to JCC to become a doctor. I put on a lab coat after college, and I took one chemistry class and dropped it. So this isn't me. I went to law school instead. That way I could do personal injuries, and you work with the human body.
You work with doctors, and
you learn about it. And so it's the best of both worlds. And then I also wanted to be a federal prosecutor. So actually, as a plaintiff lawyer, civil, you can basically prosecute anyone so long as it's a meritful case. You have to have a meritful case. I have to believe in the case. But in essence, you are a prosecutor on the civil side. And that's what interests me. So it's my, I guess probably it stems from I was pretty small in high school until I had a growth spurt my junior year, and I got my butt kicked a lot. And once I hit that growth spurt, everything changed. And so yeah, I was kind of the little guy for a while. So I like to represent the little guy. And I've seen it all. And I just got to say, hey, it's the one thing that gets me up in the morning. It says I'm not even working when I do it. So
That's awesome.
I have found what I'm supposed to do. I can tell you that because it feels great. And
that's awesome. I say, find something you love and you never work a day in your life.
I agree. And actually, it's almost dangerous because you could work too much too. So yeah,
that's fair.
Definitely self-care is a big deal.
That's fair. As a watchword for everyone out there, love what you do, but don't let it take over your life. It's good advice. So let me ask you this. If I didn't know who you were, I ran into you in an elevator. We had 30 seconds going up and I said, John, what do you do? What do you do? Like, tell my listeners who are your ideal clients. You're in the Kansas City area, and you do injury law, you do complex tort, but who are your ideal clients? What are your ideal cases? What do you focus on? What drives you, and what is your ideal law practice?
Ideal law practice. I like to learn, and I like to apply my skill set as far as kind of reverse engineering, learning something new. Every case is different. You could have an elevator case, you could have a van case, you could have something else, a product defect case, you could have even a simple case, even sometimes are even more complex than you think. And I would say, basically, I like to look at a case from 60,000 feet down and start there and then put the pieces together. But yes, I mean, I would say that an ideal case to me is, well, of course, an easy case. It's easy to get paid, but sometimes that's really not fun. I mean, you're doing a service for your client. That's fantastic. But here's what I would say to that person in the elevator. Have you ever had to have a lawyer? And if you did, what would you want from that lawyer? And often people don't know because they haven't been in the situation. But I would say that service is one thing that's important. And that's something that the Gariglietti Law Office does. And we inform our clients. We take care of our clients because a lot of things can happen when you get overwhelmed. And that's a big deal. And so our representation starts early. And that's something that we take seriously are those little things that hit you that you least expect, because it can compound fast. And, we take pride in that. But yeah, elevator speech would be this. It would be, you don't even really know what it is until it hits you. And that's what we're ready for, because I've seen it all. And I can tell you that. And so we're ready for that.
We'll dig into some of those cases later and get you to share whatever it is you can share. Before we do that, though, obviously, and I just read, you mentioned it already yourself. I mentioned it. One of my sponsors is National ERC. We all just got ideally through this pandemic. And I've talked to a lot of different attorneys, and it affected them in a lot of different ways. And I know that you were working with a larger firm for a while, and then you kind of refounded your own firm and, came back full circle. How did your experience of the pandemic affect your experience of practicing law and serving clients, et cetera?
Right. Well, actually, this is kind of I had one of my best years during the pandemic, numbers wise and generations. And I was a shareholder at McDowell Rice at the Buchanan. I was there for about 7 years. But when COVID hit, we were coming back from it was our annual meeting in Las Vegas, where we had our annual meeting. And then it started to happen. And it just kind of compounded. I mean, it was Dr. Fauci, it was Chris Como, nonstop. Mm-hmm. And it kind of set in, and next thing you know, I'm at home, and so, had to basically kind of engineer, home office, get that set up. I had a great year. I don't know how, really looking back at it, it was interesting, but I had a good year. It was a little different. I would start work in bed. Actually, I'll admit that, with my iPad and a cup of coffee. And that it was kind of the first time working from home for me. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not work from bed with your iPad and a cup of coffee? So, but eventually I was like, you know what? I got a little more structure and I started at my desk. I made sure I was at my desk at 8:30. And then I had a great year. But now the next year was lower. It was a lower year because the cases, it seemed to me, I mean, I had a slower year the next year because there weren't many people moving around getting in accidents and those types of things. So really the next year is what hit me. That's what affected me. That was 2021. That was a much slower year. So that's where it hit me. That's where it affected me. But I was impressed with myself to work from home and adjust. And, we made some major adjustments in the firm, and I thought everybody did a great job. Our CEO, president of our firm at that time, did a fantastic job, and everybody was on board. I thought that the firm handled it fantastic. But so yeah, the pandemic hit me the next year, not the year of, really. So I actually got a nice bonus that year because I got a phone call from one of the executive committees stating that you did this during COVID, so here's a bonus. And I thought that was nice. So I can adapt pretty much anywhere. I feel like I can. So I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. Let's put it that way.
What do you think some of the most important work you've done as an injury attorney? What's one of the cases that you think is most impactful or has meant the most to you?
I would say, I mean, probably the first bench trial I had ever, and that was an employee of a slaughterhouse, and I don't know. I had just started practicing, and I had a poker chip in my pocket, and this guy, my client, he had a severe case of carpal tunnel and basically could not make a fist with his right hand from using a vibrating lizard knife. It was a work comp case, actually. And I was in St. Joe, and I actually the defense, they dug their heels in, and they had an opinion from their physician that it wasn't work related. Now, this is a work comp case, wasn't work related. And I put on my expert opinion report, and the court was kind of quiet. And then I put my guy in the stand. Well, I mean, I just did one thing. I really didn't even ask him any questions. I just threw that poker chip on the floor and asked him to pick it up. And he couldn't do it. And it was over. I don't know, it sticks in my brain because it was the first one that I won. So I guess that one was kind of, I don't know if that technique, but we had to follow up with the brief. But I think that the judge found it pretty impressive. I mean, really, it was just it really wasn't any medical testimony. I had good medical testimony in the report that I had from the doctor. But that was just an example of how he couldn't pick it up. And it really, that was the first time it was the first case I ever had, and I won. So that means a lot to me. But
yeah,
had one case that I don't know. There's a lot. Every case, though, is important to me. It's hard to really pick one.
Yeah,
because I treat them all the same, and it's hard to really pick one. But everyone is particularly different. But I'll tell you one thing. Probably the best feeling in the world is doing volunteer service and working with the Kansas City Workers Justice Center And those folks that actually aren't paid for the painting work they did that week, they're taken advantage of because they don't have a social security number. Well, it's a pretty good feeling when you make that phone call. And that phone call ends up with the owner walking into the office and handing you a check. And that's hard to beat. In fact, I told the speech at the JVS when I accepted an award for volunteer service. One of the clients that I did some volunteer work for, she was not paid her overtime. And she asked her employer, and her employer's comment was, "Welcome to America." And I met her in the clinic. We went over her case. Obviously, she was owed time and a half overtime.
Yeah.
And I just right there, I called them. I called the employer. And I said, "Hi, I'm Johnny Gariglietti, attorney for this client, and welcome to America." And so that was, stuff like that. I mean, that gets me going, because when comments like that are made, they don't expect me to come in and say something like that. And I like to leave a signature on all my cases, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It plays out. You're almost like a living courtroom drama or something, like the highlight reel from one of those great courtroom dramas. That's awesome. I like that a lot. Well, let me ask you this. I'm sure it's not all highs. And, sometimes one of the most important things we can learn in life is a little bit of self-effacement and humility. I'm sure you've had in your practice of law, John, a couple of times where things didn't go the way you were hoping. Maybe a case didn't go in your direction, or maybe you thought you had a client or a witness that was going to say X, Y, and Z, but they said the wrong thing, right? Can you tell our listeners, John, about a time in your practice of law where things didn't turn out well? You had something you'd consider a setback or a failure, but what did you learn from it? And how do you carry that forward to make sure you're best serving your clients?
Oh, well, the first thing that you learn is what cases not to take. I mean, you learn that fast. And I think probably the biggest thing, I would say, is I kind of came out the door guns ablaze and probably took on cases I shouldn't have, that I thought had merit, but that were probably the causation issue was an issue. And you just kind of learn quick. Now, you have to keep a book on your desk, particularly a book called the ABA Model Rules of Professional Conduct. And I would suggest that for any lawyer. And you got to read it and you got to use it. And so and when you look at a case, you have to learn how to evaluate the case. And I think setting reasonable client expectations is a big deal too. So now we're going to get to where I think that I probably had probably some of the bigger issues. I mean, it just was family issues, I think. I mean, my dad was last year on the bench, and he was diagnosed with stage 4 rectal cancer. And that was his graduation gift. I mean, I guess retirement gift. So I did a lot of help. I helped a lot with that, and also practicing law full time. And so that actually, that was hard. That was very, very hard. It was hard to do that and come out afterward and really kind of keep focus. It was a shocker for me. And then, and I've also lost my mother and brother-in-law within a short period of time. So I've kind of had a rocky road in a way, as far as kind of deaths that I really wasn't expecting, because, I mean, that's just not what I imagined it to be. But, and I think, you sometimes ask yourself, why me? And then I ask, why not me? Why not me? And it's okay to not be okay with that. And so, life, Rocky, what does he say? He says, it's not how hard you can punch, it's how many punches you can take and keep going forward. And that's how I am. And I've had to be. And I think that people underestimate me. And especially, I think that that's a characteristic that has made me stronger, more observant, more purpose, more focus. And I think it has molded me into a better lawyer because it's forced me to channel, things that my father was a great resource. How great would it be to have a dad that's a judge and a lawyer?
Yeah.
I mean, and then you become a lawyer, and after year 2 or 3, he is gone. So, that was a really great thing to have. I was lucky. So that was kind of the biggest struggle. Was trying to get back in that groove after I lost him. But so that was it. But other than that, yes, you're learning something every day. You just ABA model rules, make sure you meet your deadlines, and you're fine.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So let me ask you this. I'm sure people come to you. I know you said, choosing your cases is a skill that you really need to have as an attorney. I know that can, definitely increase your likelihood of wins, is making sure you're spending your time on cases with lots of merit and everything else. I'm sure people come into your office or come to you and they have some preconceived notions about what you can do and what you can't do for them. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions people have about lawyers, particularly in your area of practice in torts, in personal injury, that is, something you'd like to functionally disabuse them of?
Oh, I would just do away with billboards automatically. And yes, no, it's frustrating. This profession, it's a noble profession, and I just do not agree with the advertising mediums out there. And especially being a plaintiff lawyer, obviously people say ambulance chasers all of the time.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is sometimes you are the ambulance. And you have a guy that walks in your office with his intestines hanging out. You're not signing a contract. You're getting that guy to the hospital.
Yeah.
So I don't think injury lawyers get enough credit, because first of all, you only get paid if you win. Second of all, people don't understand what it takes, the connections, those things, to help people in those types of situations. And every case is different. You may have somebody with no insurance, no social security card, and can't get medical treatment, and has, like I said, I had a guy walk in with his stomach open. I've had one walk in with a compound fracture, bone sticking out of his arm. These guys can't even get into a hospital. And also you have, you see a lot of things that I think this industry doesn't get enough attention as far as positive publicity. And that's probably, tort deform, I call it, which all started with Karl Rove and Bush. And they made that McDonald's hot coffee. They spun it in a way that wasn't true. And if you don't believe me, watch the hot coffee documentary, and you'll see that that lady, the skin grafts on her legs, incredible. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Sort of does. I was kind of curious about when people come to you, maybe they have like a misconception of what you can do for them, or how magically you'll turn everything around.
I guess the misconception is, I apologize.
Well, that kind of answers the question I have. So
yeah, no, I was thinking about that. And the misconception is that, if someone walks in and says, the first thing they say is, hey, how much can I get on this? That's a red flag. And I think some people have a misconception of what the process is about. So I've had people come in, not come in the office, but I've had people ask me, "Hey, what if we fake a fall at Home Depot?" I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, people trying to, want to do some, create an action, and it's unbelievable. So the misconception is this. I mean, we're going to get big bucks, and sometimes that's not the case, and it's not, and that is what kind of affects the industry. I think it affects the expectations that people have when they maybe just have soft tissue injuries. They maybe don't have a fracture. Maybe they just have degenerative changes in their spine. Maybe there's no objective findings of structural impact to their body, and we can't show that. So they don't understand that. They need to understand that. And so that's the misconception, is that you walk into a lawyer's office, it's a plaintiff lawyer, and you see these big numbers on websites. We got this amount, we got this amount. That's a misconception. I'm saying it's not true. I mean, it's definitely true. These cases, people get big amounts, but everybody thinks that we are there to get maximum compensation. But ultimately, that's really the only compensation. That's how we have to get people justice, is compensation. So obviously, the focus is on that. But that's probably, expectations with the client is a big deal. And so that's the biggest misconception, is the amount of money they can win.
It's one of the things, and my longtime listeners know that I've actually always respected injury attorneys, because I do feel that you guys get a bad rap, right? Ambulance chasers being the most common pejorative out there. I mean, obviously you need to be able to, people need to find you. They need to know that you exist, right? But you guys really do. You fill a niche, you fill a need in the marketplace of helping people that can't afford the hourly wage of an attorney. I mean, the average attorney salary 10, 15 years ago, I think, was like $500 nationally. And I'm sure it's gone up since then, right? Most people don't have the capital to outlay even a couple hours with an attorney, let alone the amount of work that goes into a case. Like, I'm sure you've spent scores and scores of hours, poring over documents and taking, depositions or talking with experts and everything else. So I've always greatly respected the injury law field, because I think you guys really do fill a need, and you make justice accessible to everybody. People that are injured and don't have resources, they don't know where to go, they don't know who to turn to. And as I always say, it's a tagline on my show: if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Right. So I've always appreciated that. So let me ask you this: you mentioned, your job really is, in a sense, to get maximum compensation for your clients. It is to get, a favorable settlement or favorable verdict. How do you approach negotiations with, an insurance company and your defendant? And what strategies do you utilize to get a favorable settlement or a favorable verdict?
It really depends on the case. I would say that, and the nature of the case, the nature of the defendant, nature of the insurance company, if there is one, hopefully. It really depends on the case. So negotiations really is not the first thing. No, you can, some lawyers think, file a lawsuit and we just file it. Well, they're going to offer a settlement. You cannot operate that way. No. You file that lawsuit, you got to move the ball down the field. You can't just sit there. I mean, you got to move the ball down the field like the Chiefs did this year, right? So you gotta force it. You got to move it like you're going to try it, and you are going to try it. That's the mindset. You have to force it. You have to move it. You have to be courteous too. I believe in being courteous to other counsel, but you got to move it. And so that's a big deal. And so negotiations, there's a classic scene, the start of the civil action with Travolta, if you haven't seen it, a classic negotiation scene in a trial. That's a negotiation. But I would say, really, I try to obviously I want to make my clients happy. And especially some clients need that compensation to live.
Yeah.
For the rest of their lives. So, you have to you have to have the experience necessary to understand maybe what somewhat of a break-even analysis. If you were to negotiate a early settlement, you weigh the interest of the client too. Maybe that client might be terminally ill, and you may have to file a petition without a special petition to take deposition testimony without filing the petition in the actual petition. There's just certain elements to every case that you have to kind of formulate to help that client. And so negotiation, you need to be strong, and you need to definitely have an expert opinion. I mean, that always helps. You have to back up what you're doing. And without those objective findings and something to that nature, it's hard for an insurance company to take you seriously. And so that's how I work up a case. I work up a case as if it's going to trial.
Always presume that it could go to trial.
Yes.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's a good strategy. I'm sure it keeps you focused, keeps you in the game.
Well, you have to, because you got to be ready to go. I mean, you're doing a disservice. You're not being a diligent lawyer. I mean, you have to be ready.
Well, John, I appreciate the amount of time you've given me already. And
Sure.
my listeners don't know we had a long pre-roll trying to get some things set up and whatnot, because again, meteoric rise. So we'll probably wrap the interview up here in a minute, but I'm going to ask you my two famous questions that everyone likes here in just a minute. Okay. Question number one, again, as a reminder, is if we were to go back in time and meet a young John, maybe fresh out of law school or even before you went to law school, what advice would you give yourself and why? Other than, of course, the obvious, as I always joke, buy a lot of Bitcoin, trust me. Hold it till 60K at least. And then the second question is this: my magical pen here can strike laws from the books, it can edit laws that are on the books, or it can add new laws to the books. And if I loaned you my pen to make one edit, change, addition, subtraction from the law, it can be a big national law with sweeping ramifications. It could be a little tiny law that just makes you fill out forms in triplicate 10 times a week. What law would you change and why? So while you're percolating on that, we're going to jump back over really quickly and take a look at your site. Again, as always, there'll be a link in the description down below. And as a reminder, John's website is currently in construction, so it'll look a lot better when you actually see it. This is just a placeholder piece, but you can see his logo up there, and that is garlawyers.com, garlawyers.com, 816-631-4878, which again, I believe spells the word hurt. That's 816-631-HURT if you need a mnemonic device to remember his number. Our final sponsor tonight is Rank with News. If there is a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Forbes, Bloomberg, and others, and see those articles rank locally, sometimes in under 8 hours, for major competitive keywords that people were looking for, what else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and often permanently. This is essentially guaranteed SEO or search engine optimization on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. Visit rankwithnews.com or rankwith.news to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. All righty, close that down here. And all right, so final two questions here, John. The big two. We go back in time. We meet a young you, and you're able to pass on some wisdom to yourself. What are you going to tell yourself? And of course, by extension, somebody who finds themselves fresh out of law school, what advice would you give yourself?
Get it in writing.
No matter what it is.
That's it. Whatever it is, get it in writing, and do your research, and know who you're working with, and maybe be a little bit, and be cautious, and just be observant too. And I would say, but yes, I mean, I think, I think generations right now, I mean, lawyers need to focus on generations. You need to focus on getting business. So as an attorney now, looking back at myself as a young guy, I would say, if you're going to do something, do it do what you love and the money will come. Now, that's a phrase that my dad always said, but there's an extra layer on top of that that I've added to that phrase. And that is do what you love and the money will come, but get it in writing.
That sounds like wise advice. It sounds like there might be a little bit of more of a backstory there, but you don't need to go into that unless you really want to. But it's interesting advice. And I sometimes I fear we're in too much of a litigious society. I don't really, and I'm not going to go super political. I know that people speak of what's called hookup culture, and people having, far more willing relationships than, they would have had in ages past. But I've heard now that there's apps that people will actually take on dates, and it's like a consent app, and you literally like tick the boxes on what you're consenting to. So they're literally getting it in writing before you agree to do anything with this person, even if it's just, a kiss on the cheek, even. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything beyond that, but like everything is in consent. Sometimes I'm afraid we're almost too litigious, but I'm sure that there's definitely times when that absolutely makes sense, particularly in like a business arrangement or business agreement or something like that. So fascinating, fascinating advice. Anyway, all right. So the other fun question. This is my magic pen. This one in particular is from the Spice Merchant, which is down in Wichita, Kansas. They sell coffees and things, but I picked this pen up and found out it magically can change laws, which is kind of fascinating. So this is not a sponsored post. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they have good coffee and a really nice pen with a rubber tip and everything. So if I loan you this pen, John, and with this pen, you can, again, strike a law from the books. You can edit a law that's on the books or add a new law to the books that needs to be there. Major national law, little tiny local law, trivial, sweeping ramifications, whatever it is. What law are you going to change and why?
Oof. Oh, wow. That's a big one. I mean, really, I mean, several, but if I was going to focus on one, I would probably, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, and this is kind of this requires some thought, but it would obviously be a law that would be considered tort reform, which I think is mislabeled. That's actually called, I think it's tort deform. Now, Kansas, particularly the workers' compensation system and the statutes regarding personal injury claims, they limit damages significantly for pain and suffering. And you get a quadriplegic person, you get somebody, a wrongful death, you get something like that, you get certain cases, you're capped. So what justice does that do? How is that going to help that person? And so the limiting of that person's compensation, and also workers' compensation in Kansas, terrible. A permanent total case, you cannot work. The max award is around $150,000. What is that going to do? That's ridiculous. Now, whoever drafted that, I wonder how they sleep at night. I really do. I wonder how they sleep at night thinking that guy out there who can't bring a civil action, who brought a work comp action, how $150,000 should last him the rest of his life if he's permanently and totally disabled from a work injury. Now, chew on that. That is something ridiculous. So that's probably, I'd start there. I would start there.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've talked to attorneys in other places that do injury law, and I've found there's similar laws on the books in lots of places. I'm a Kansas resident. I didn't realize that was the cap for workers' comp. And some places they cap medical mal the same, right? So you go in for an operation, they take off the wrong leg, or they do you die in the process, and the best you can get is $100,000 or something. And like there's nothing here. We can't do anything with this, and like yeah. When you're injured due to somebody else's negligence, I think that you deserve compensation, and that's the whole point of the whole system we have set up, I think. And then laws like that get on the books, so yeah, it's frustrating, and I think it's a good start. It's absolutely a good start. Well, John, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today and my listeners. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I know we had a lot of a pre-roll and setup as well, but I do always like to let my guests have the final word. Is there any final thoughts, any words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh, I would just say, we hope that you check out garlawyers.com, and, we take particular pride in our service. I think that is, I like good service. So wherever I go, and I know places that have great service. So we take pride in that. I've lived in Italy for a while. Jasper's one of my favorite restaurants. They have great service. But I have a Latin phrase that I live by. And my dad actually told me this phrase just recently. I think he told it to me. He channeled it through somehow. He channeled it to me. Now, it is, I'm not going to pronounce it, but I'll tell you what it signifies. Okay. And that is, let justice be done, though the heavens fall. And if you think about that phrase, what does that mean? That means that no matter the consequences, you seek justice. So the heavens fall, meaning regardless of the consequences, you do the right thing. And the biggest thing to me I can think of, I don't think people have taken that seriously, is that oath that you take when you become a lawyer. And when you put your hand up and you swear under God to do your job and be a noble person, it's a noble profession, that not enough attorneys take that seriously. And that's something I think about it every day at work. It is a noble profession. And those that don't follow that are ruining the profession. So that's why we have the disciplinary council. So basically, I take that oath personally. I would just leave on that. And that's just something that moment sticks with me. So I just thought I'd leave with that. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Fiat justitia ruat caelum.
There it is. Yes. There it is.
Let justice be done, though the heavens may fall.
That is right.
That is a great phrase. Well,
Justice
John,
must be, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, go ahead. I was going to say I was going to wrap us up, but you were going to say one more thing. Go for it.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a couple new things, and I always appreciate any conversation where I get to learn something new. I think our listeners have enjoyed it as well. This has been the Attorney Post. I've been talking with John Gariglietti, of the law firm that bears his name. That's garlawyers.com to find his website. Again, when you guys see it, it'll look better than it looks now, and that's okay. You can also, the link will be down below in the description wherever you're watching this on YouTube, Amazon, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever it happens to be, Apple, iTunes. We always do appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share on any of those podcasts if you happen to see us there. It helps us with the rankings. If you found this helpful, sharing that out is also useful as well. As a reminder, although we've been chatting law on this podcast does not itself constitute legal advice. As always, if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter that you need help with. Obviously, especially if you're in the Kansas City area, where John practices, I can say pretty confidently he'd be a great resource for you. So feel free to visit his law firm or give him a call below. But always, seek out the advice of a competent attorney, because, as I always say, don't know your rights, you don't have any. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.